I don't do Snapchat.
Good evening and welcome to the regular council meeting for July 4th, 2018. We're starting the meeting at 7:04. Our apologies for being a touch late. At this time, item 2, are there any emergent items from councillors? Any councillors have any emergent items? Any emergent items from administration or legislative services? No. There are no presentations or recognitions, I believe, tonight, which brings us to item 4.
We need confirmation.
Oh, sorry, thank you. Could I get a confirmation of agenda motion?
I would move that we confirm the agenda as reported.
Thank you, Councillor Sobel. You've all heard the motion. All in favor? Thank you for that motion. Which brings us to item 4.1, delegation.
No, presentations.
There are presentations?
I
too?
have a recognition.
Oh, okay, thank you. Sorry. Deputy Mayor Bauer has a recognition.
So I have two people that I would like to recognize. The first is the Strathmore. I'd like to thank the Strathmore Disc Golf Club for hosting the Canada Day Tournament, the MB Open Disc Golf. Players traveled from BC, Saskatchewan, and all corners of Alberta, numbering up to 200. Comments included in emails were that the MB Open was run very professionally and was well organized with lots of support from local businesses, and especially noted was Origins Brewery, which created a beer specifically for this event and hosted a putting tournament before the event on Saturday evening. Congratulations to Matt Bima and the Strathmore Disc Golf Club Board on this successful event. My next recognition, it goes to the town of Strathmore staff volunteers. During Canada Day, it also included the Strathmore Fire Department, who hosted the breakfast, operations staff who set up, parks and community services staff who served cake and organized booth events and entertainment for our school media department, and our social media department, who advertised and promoted all of the fun events from dawn to dusk. So thank you to the town of Strathmore and all of the people that were organizing the Canada Day events. Thank
you for that, Deputy Mayor Bauer. And now, if there are no other recognitions, we have a delegation. 4.1, the Strathmore and District Chamber of Commerce. So we tend to remind all our delegations, and I don't mean to slight you in any way, but we have a 10-minute presentation, and then you may actually have some questions and comments from councillors. So welcome.
Thank you. Greetings to you, Your Worship, Mayor Fuel and Deputy Mayor Bauer, which I learned of today, so congrats, and councillors. It's an honor to speak with you today about what's happening at the Strathmore and District Chamber of Commerce. And for those of you who don't know, my name is Wanda Reinholt and I am the president of the Chamber. At the end of March, I moved from vice president to president, and during our first meeting in April with a new board, I realized very quickly how tremendous my team was. One of the first decisions that we made as a team is to actively and honestly live out our mission and vision, which is to be the leading resource in supporting the growth of our diverse business community through networking, member benefits, and advocacy. Our board desires to develop relationship with business owners and create great Strathmore business benefits that are put into action. I was very excited and encouraged by this direction and discussion because from speaking with various business owners and members of the chamber as vice president, what I gathered is that businesses had a challenge being a part of the chamber because they did not feel that there was actual benefit, or they were not aware of the benefits that we could provide. Since our initial discussion, our 2018 board has taken steps towards changing this. We have been taking steps such as building on the foundation that our president before, Terry Kinsman, and her team built, and building on top of that strong benefits for our members, including a welcome system, which includes one-on-one connection with our board, a business development strategy that engages business owners in the chamber and community and is about advocacy, and an event calendar that comes alongside, celebrates, and lifts up local business. And by the way, our business awards are currently scheduled for the evening of Monday, October 15th. Our goal is to develop ongoing relationships with local leaders and business owners, to know what they are doing and to know how we can support and what we can offer them, and then to actually do it well. As volunteers, we're aware that we cannot do this fast, nor can we do it all at once, although we want to. Plus, we desire to do what we do with excellence. So we're looking at having a strategic planning to hone in on a focus for the year and for the next couple of years. In addition, we want to partner with available resources in our tremendous community who can help us provide the relationship, support, and advocacy we desire. I want to thank the town especially for the work that you have done to make relationships and processes with business owners like our land developers better. Your work in creating easier and better systems and better communication with them is very much needed and valued by our business community. And I want to thank you to our town councillor Bob Sobel and our county rep, Councillor Tom Eichert, whom we are working with intentionally to regionally develop our plans. And this is very important, so thank you, Bob, for your input. My focus as president is to encourage the creation of clear and impactful plans and to see them implemented. So local business owners are seeing that they are actually supported. Our biggest need right now is a social media volunteer. Myself and our ED, Lawrence, have been working on it, but because we are doing so much for the chamber, it would really help us if we had a volunteer to help us out. I'm open to ideas and suggestions to consider for our chamber and to take back to our board, and I want to thank you for the opportunity to serve the community in this way and to talk with you today. Any questions or suggestions?
Thank you very much, Wanda. Are there any questions or comments from councillors? Deputy Mayor Bauer.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Wanda, for your presentation. How does the Chamber of Commerce currently get their message out to the people, the business community in Strathmore? Do you have an advertising newsletter, or would it be helpful to advertise some other ways with the town helping you?
Yeah, we're developing that more, Councillor Bauer. We currently have an advertisement in the paper in the town section that we use. We use social media. We have messages that go out to our members, but we haven't had a specifically developed newsletter, but we're in the process of developing that. It's one of the things that we're developing as a benefit for our members. That's something that's in the plans, and we're looking at that being a quarterly, so it's not too overwhelming for Lawrence to do and for us to do. So we're working on developing that more and would be open to suggestions to develop our messaging and
We
get it out
have
there
a
more.
number of different pamphlets in our main foyer. I'm thinking that perhaps the chamber could just have something in there as a welcome to Strathmore little.
Cool, and we're also developing a welcome package for our members, so that will be done better as well. So, yeah, thank you for those suggestions, yeah.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Bauer. Any other comments or questions? Well, thank you very much, Wanda, for your presentation and your ongoing work with the Chamber of Commerce. We know you have a good representative with Councillor Sobel as well. He'll bring a lot of energy and drive to your committee.
Absolutely.
Best of luck in your months ahead, and we wish you all the best.
Thank you so
Good luck
much.
with your visioning, too.
Thank you.
Thank you. Which brings us to item 5, the confirmation of minutes, the minutes of the June 20th, 2018 regular council meeting.
I will move that we accept the June 20th minutes as presented.
Thank you, Councillor Montgomery. You've all heard the motion. All in favor? And that motion is carried. Item 6, tabled items. We have the Strathmore RCMP Financial Forecast Report, which is found on page 11 of your handout. And Ms. Sawatsky, are you speaking to this from Legislative Services?
Your Worships, thank you. We put this item back into the agenda as council wanted to discuss what was handed out to them by the staff sergeant at our last council meeting.
Thank you. Councillor Sobel.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just give me 1 second here. So there's just a couple of comments I would like to make. First of all, I would like to emphasize the fact that this is a planning document, and it is not a financial commitment to this council at this time for any of the costs that have been incorporated in here. Also, I thought it was interesting to note in page 2, under overview, the very first item there is kind of telling. It's a 2016 police to population ratio for Strathmore Municipal Detachment. It's got 1,033 people per member, and the division average through Alberta is 746. So certainly our members are above average when it comes to the amount of people that they're actually policing. And I said 2, but I lied. It's actually 3, because the other item, now that I remember it, is the reason why I thought it was important to emphasize the fact that this is a planning document is things could change with their requirements. We have a fairly large area west of town in the hamlet of Langdon. If it's not a hamlet, I apologize. Nobody get mad at me. But in Langdon, at any rate, their population's over 5,000. They're going to require a police presence in that municipality, and that will very clearly affect us for the better, I might add. Removing that area out of this detachment's responsibility will be an assistance. So things could change, but I like to see a document like this. It gives us some ideas to where we're going in the next few years, and I would be prepared to make a motion when your worship is ready.
Thank you, Councillor Sobel. Are there any other comments from councillors? Councillor Peterson.
I just had a question, and probably Councillor Sobel could answer it. When I was going through the document, when we talked about the Joint Policing Task Force, is there capacity to build on that? Because what I'm hearing, there is a desire on the parts of the other communities to do that. So is there enough malleability built into the document, do you think, to do that?
You're talking about the task force?
I'm talking about
Okay,
the plan and being
so-
able to build that in.
Yeah, well, absolutely. This is something that I think is very strongly looked at by K-Division.
Yeah.
It's been being met with a great deal of success at this point.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to continue. Resources is always the issue with a task force such as that, because these are not permanent positions. They're borrowed
Yeah, right.
from existing detachments. So once again,
There's an
puts us
awareness.
in a good position to
Yeah, right.
have sufficient manpower.
And so there's an awareness that we may be asked to go into that. And I just want to say that task force has been extremely effective, and I think it has really provided a buffer for this community and for our rural community. Thank you, Councillor Sobel.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. If there are no other comments, Councillor Sobel.
Your worship, I'm prepared to move that the council accept this report for information purposes.
Thank you, Councillor Sobel. You've all heard the motion. All in favor? And that motion is carried. Which brings us to item 7, items from administration. 7.1, Community Investment Fund Funding Recommendations, page 13. And we have Mark Pretzlaff, and I hope I'm pronouncing your last name correctly. Welcome to the council meeting, and we appreciate your presence here.
No, thank you, Your Worship and Council. As you've noted here, I'm here to discuss the Community Investment Fund, the CIF, and the recommendations for funding for 3 organizations or 3 events that 2 have recently occurred and 1 for 2019. Councillor Bauer, or Deputy Mayor Bauer, already spoke about the success of the NB Open that was just last week. We also had the Blackfoot Cultural, Cultural Show and Rodeo that also occurred last weekend as well. And then we also have the Off the Rails Family Fun Run that's scheduled for 2019. This is coming to you now. We were delayed in terms of forming our committee, just in terms of getting some support from the community at large to form that committee. By the time we met, there was just some delays in terms of processing it and moving forward. So we weren't able to meet the timelines for Off the Rails, the Family Fun Run. But the recommendations of the committee was that they be moved forward for 2019. And as you can see in the document provided, the council, the committee has requested or would like the council to approve the following funding for the following, for the events: $5,000 for the Embiid Disc Open, $5,000 for the Blackfoot Cultural Show, and $1,000 for Off the Rails Family Fun Run.
Thank you. I'm not sure who was first now. Councillor Montgomery? Oh, your light was just on?
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Mark. So I guess like my one question is, well, I know I have a few questions, but the first one would be why are we getting these after the fact?
So these requests were actually submitted several, well in advance of both of their events.
Yeah.
And the delay in getting it to in front of council here was a part of the committee's inability to form the committee to review the grants.
Okay.
And that was pretty much the biggest delay there, so.
Okay. And why is administration recommending differently than the CIF committee for the Blackfoot Cultural Show?
I guess twofold. One is we got some additional information after the fact from the Blackfoot Cultural Show, a revised budget statement. You can see it in your package. There were some concerns with the budget that they provided in terms of the revenue and the expenses for that event, and so we've got to recently have a updated budget for them that we can look to share. The second was just I guess historical purposes, that to support the these type of events, we don't want to discourage them from moving. So the recommendation from administration was to provide them with their initial request and get some additional information, which was their updated budget.
Okay. And are we concerned at all with, rather than like the budget, given that it's already happened, but the actual results of their, like, are we looking at that, or do we just care about their budget?
In terms of the results of their rodeo, or in terms
Well,
of
the revenue versus, like, you know, what was, because that was kind of the concern, right? The revenue versus what they were projecting to
Correct.
expend, and, you know, given that they've already had it, the budget really doesn't matter. It matters more what the results were, I think,
Right,
so.
yeah, so both organizations, Embiid and the Blackfoot, are required to provide a post-event report. So at that time, we'll have an updated, we may not have an updated budget, because obviously that takes some time, but the revised budget leading into the event, we do have, so.
Okay, all right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Montgomery, Deputy Mayor Bauer, and then Councillor Corbeil.
Thank you, Your
Oh, okay,
Worship.
so there we go, Deputy Mayor Bauer.
Thank you, Mark. I just want to thank you and the Community Investment Fund Review Committee for their hard work on these 3 applications. I really appreciate their suggestions to each group and their ability to align the mandate of the committee with the applications and going over and doing their due diligence with, especially with the Blackfoot Cultural Show and Rodeo, being able to ask them for more financials to be able to approve them for the full amount. I challenge other nonprofit community groups to put together funding proposals, because this is the first one that we as a council have been able to approve to access the remaining, and I believe it's about $19,000 is available. So I'd just like to put that out there and let other groups know that this is available to them.
Great.
Thank
I will
you.
pass on your comments to the committee.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Bauer. Councillor Sobel.
Thank you. Thanks for the report, Mark. So just trying to get this clear in my head. For the Off the Rails Family Fun, this money is approved for 2019?
That's the recommendation. It's for council to approve at this point. That's the recommendation for the from the committee to council.
Are they okay with that?
The
Off the Rails Committee?
We will have to follow up with them pending the discussions of this. Did they not apply for it?
Well, here's the issue. Unless I know that they don't need the money for 2018, I'm not prepared to support giving it to them in 2019. If they need the money now.
Yeah, so that event did not run.
Oh, it didn't. Oh, that was the one that did not run. I'm sorry. Okay. So
So this.
So
money- that's fine.
then I'll revise my question.
Yeah,
Are they applying for a fund, this money for 2019?
if they do, then we would have access to this already approved money so that they can meet their timelines of ordering the medals and participant medals. That was the delay for this year.
Yeah, I've got a problem with that. Because if they haven't even applied for it, why are we taking money out of the pot that might be used for something else? They may, we're locking up $5,000 is what we're
No,
doing.
just $1,000.
Or 1,000, sorry.
Yeah.
We're still locking that up.
Yeah, and
So I'd have a problem with approving that without an application. In regards to the Blackfoot Cultural Show and Rodeo, was there a consideration of going back to the committee with the new information?
sorry, from our, not at this time. I think would be my, I guess my naivety of running the committee, chairing that committee the first time, is that we would go back to them with this updated financial information.
More information.
So that they would get accurate information moving forward.
I had a follow-up one that would probably tie in with Councillor Sobel's,
Sure,
and
go
that
ahead.
and that is the $1,000 for the Off the Rails Family Fun Run for 2019. If we have this approved for next year and the group does not request, at what point would that money be freed for other groups to be able to access? Like, you would have it earmarked for them.
Correct.
But then if they don't get off the ground or something happens and they don't have the event, when is that freed up again that another group might be able to apply?
I guess it would be, if they don't apply, after their deadline, then the money would go back to the pot, Your Worship.
Okay. Councillor Sobel, are you more comfortable with approving the two without the off the rails and have them come back and apply at a later time?
Well, certainly. I think we should wait for an application before we start awarding money, but I'm not 100% comfortable with the Blackfoot one as well. I really would have, I just feel that out of respect for the committee, I think they should have had a say in bumping this up to 5,000 based on the numbers. So I do have a concern for that. Are you able to tell me, Mark, is that money, and I know this is this occurred last week, or earlier in this month, the
Just at the
30th
end
of
of the
June?
month, yeah.
Yeah. Are they waiting on hands and, are they very anxious to get this money back?
Well, I've shared with them the committee's recommendation
Okay.
of $2,500.
Right.
Because of the questions or the concerns raised with the budget that they submitted.
Right.
So they're not aware that the recommendation of administration that proceed with the $5,000.
Okay. How quickly could you get a committee struck?
I think the
to
committee
just
already exists,
discuss-
so we could definitely share via email the.
I'm not trying to be difficult
Nope.
here. This is just strictly out of respect for the committee.
enough,
Because that's contrary to what their recommendation was, and they may very well agree with administration, which I would anticipate. But that's all the questions I have.
Thank you, Councillor Sobel. If I could just ask a question of administration, was there a reason why the recommendation was to increase it from 2,500 to 5,000? Is it just because you've received the revised budget from them?
Well, it's, Your Worship, it's based on, I guess you're right, the revised budget, but as well as to try to support these type of events and assist them in whatever ways we can, both financially and administratively wise.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Corbeil?
Thank you, Your Worship. Does this go on a yearly basis? Like, does this start over in 2019? Or is it just
There's more than one.
I think you're asking, would they have to
like,
then
is it a
apply
fiscal-
again?
Yeah, well, what I'm meaning, yeah, like, because if the one event is 2019 and it starts all over again, are we taking money out of 2018, or how does this work? Sorry, it might be my naive.
There are two deadlines. Yeah.
So we have two intakes in the year, one in May and one in September. If you approved funding for a 2019 event, which you can do within the parameters of the policy, we would just earmark that in the 2019 budget. So instead of, X amount of dollars were allocated for the project in 2019, 1,000 of that would already be
I see.
earmarked for an event. We do encourage events to apply early on so they
Absolutely.
can ensure funding, and that's one of the ways we can support them without having them wait until the last minute to know if they get funding.
Thank you. Yeah, so that was my only thing, is if we were taking out of 2018 or 19, but it doesn't matter. I really think that we should wait for an application. I know that they're planning on hopefully running, and it's a great event, but I completely agree. I think we should wait for them to apply. And then, yeah, I also agree with, I think we should kind of respect the committee. I wish it would have come from them, the $5,000 for the Blackfoot Cultural Show and Rodeo. If they are on board for it, I think that they've done their due diligence. I think it's kind of a disrespect thing if we approve something that they don't agree with, so, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Corbeil. My only question about that is if we approve the 2,500 that the committee originally approved, are they left with a shortfall, the Blackfoot Cultural Show and Rodeo? Are they in a deficit situation? No?
No, Your Worship.
They only asked for 25.
Okay, thank you. So then if there is no more discussion.
I have a motion,
No?
Your Worship.
Okay, thank you.
I would request the council approve the following funding through the Community Investment Fund. $5,000 to the MB Open Disc Golf Tournament. That's the end of my motion, Your Worship.
Sorry, I thought you were pausing for effect.
No.
So your motion just includes, did you want it, you're not interested in the 2,500 that the committee had recommended at first?
For the
I'm just
Blackfoot-
confused. Yeah.
No, I'm hoping that, administration will go back to their committee and then come back with us after discussion with their committee.
Okay, so,
For a revised number.
okay, so is everyone on council understanding what the motion is? Councillor Peterson?
If I can just ask for clarity, I think I agree with what you're saying. So the $5,000 that's been recommended by administration would go through committee as per protocol and come back to council. Thank you.
Yes, I believe that's correct. So you've all heard the motion by Councillor Sobel. All in favor? And that motion is carried with direction that you meet again as a committee and relook at the other ones. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Council.
That brings us to item 7.2, the Youth Club Progress Plan. And Linda Bernicki, welcome to council tonight, and we are ready to hear your report. Thank you.
Good evening, Your Worship and Council. The report I'm going to discuss is a roadmap for the Youth Club of Strathmore from January 2018 to December 2018. As you are probably all aware, the ongoing need for child and youth programs and services in the community need to be strengthened. And some ways that we can do that is through constructive community dialogue, a well-articulated strategic plan, and a shift of thinking, and including a balance between program delivery and community development. In your package you received, you can kind of see where we started in January. January and February was focused on reviewing and aligning current practices, policies, and regulations with town policies and regulations and provincial and federal legislation. March and April was a lot of time spent on reviewing and assessing the current programs, including the after-school care program, and implementing some administrative controls. And as part of program planning, researching best practices with a focus on municipal youth centers. And we also focused on implementing provincial legislation of staff working with children and youth. In May and June, we started to rebuild our team dynamics, and we consulted with the after-school care consultant, and we were able to hire a supervisor for the youth center. So we're very happy to announce tonight that A. Hughes has accepted the youth club supervisory position, and she will be starting on the 17th of July. Aya Hughes, AIA. In July and August, we're going to continue to evaluate the after-school care program, specifically with the new services that are being offered in town. And we're going to look at developing a youth survey that we will implement through a variety of venues. And in September and October, we're really going to focus on youth consultation and the parents of youth and service providers in the community, with our ultimate goal in November and December to develop a comprehensive strategic business plan that will provide us direction until 2022, specifically outlining budget and roles and responsibility and timelines.
Thank you, Linda. Did you have more to add, or are you?
No, I'm just happy to answer any
Okay,
questions.
thank you. Councillor Peterson, followed by Deputy Mayor Bauer.
Thank you, Ms. Bernicki. I really appreciate this. When you speak about strategic development to identify gaps, and I'm assuming you'll be talking to Golden Hills School Division with the program that they're proposing to run after-school care in all of the elementary schools in the community, and we'll also be able to talk to licensed businesses that are currently providing after-school care, that'll form part of the consultation?
Definitely, and we've already started that process of the communication with them.
And I really appreciate the research that you're putting into this in terms of best practice. I really appreciate that. Will we be, I know that in past conversations about comprehensive programming, we've looked at threshold testing, and we've looked at gradated threshold testing. So, you know, where you may not meet the threshold if you have one child, you may definitely meet it if you have 2 or 3. Will that be a consideration going forward as well?
So that'll be part of be part of the research of how we want to build programs for the children and youth in. So that'd be one part of what we would be looking at and seeing how the research that we get from that, how we can implement it into
In terms of
programs
identifying
maybe.
gaps
Yeah.
as well?
Yeah.
And then I noted the only concern that I have, and it's probably something that I'm just missing. I note that there's no budget numbers or implications with this until on the update on the pathway until November, December for 2019. But I do assume that budget numbers will come forward before then. I'm assuming that you're not operating without a budget at this point.
So what the current budget is, and then of course when we're doing budget in late in August, we just want to be really strategic in what that's going to look like moving forward.
Thank you. Thank you, Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. Deputy Mayor Bauer.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you, Linda, for your report. I'm really impressed that you have focused so much on standards of safety, codes of ethics, and bringing all the programs that the town of Strathmore is doing at the youth club to a minimum level of safety, and keeping that all in mind. I also just was noticing that it doesn't really say the ages of the students or of the youth that you are providing programs for. There is one part in July and August that says enhance the collaboration with community agencies and organizations to provide programs for children 6 to 12 within the broader community. But you're servicing more than just those youth that are 6 to 12, are you not?
Definitely, yes, we are. That's in there specifically because of the current after-school care program model, and that's the age group that focuses on. So that's just the one component. So it's from 6 to 18 if you're still in high school at the age of 18, yes.
And so there's no gaps in the programming of what we have in other agencies within the town and the youth club? Like there's a nice transition there from what's available for the 1 to 5, and then the youth club can service the 6 to 18 is what I'm saying.
Yes and no, because we have started to identify gaps in service delivery for children and youth, and it's dependent on age, and it's dependent on, for example, the after-school care program, or if it's a sports program, or how people can access the program. So there is a gap in service in that way, and so that's something that we're looking at with the review of the programs. What type of gap in service is there, and who should be best to be fulfilling that gap? Is it should it be us, or is there another service provider in the community that can help fill that gap? Or is there a collaboration of service providers to be able to fill that gap?
Thank you. And I also noticed that you asked for suggestions from us for how to implement the youth survey. I would suggest perhaps at Revs, we could set up a table, and then also having some type of addendum to the fall registration packages that goes in with Golden Hills School Division and Holy Cross Collegiate. Just something for the parents to know. Yeah, perhaps maybe a link to the survey or asking actual questions and see how many are handed in to the schools. Because parents are used to filling out a lot of paperwork at that time.
At that time of the year.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Bauer. Councillor Montgomery.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, thank you very much, Linda, for this report. I was just wondering, I guess, what services do you think the town should not be providing if there was gaps in services? Where should the town not step in?
I'm not really sure.
Are you thinking overlapping? What are we overlapping? Is that what you mean?
Well, I just mean like we can find gaps wherever we look hard enough. But I mean like and I guess I'm concerned where under strategy it says explore expanding the scope of services offered after school. Should we be looking at expanding the scope of services even? Maybe we should be looking at reducing the scope of services. Maybe there's things that the town should not be looking at getting into. So I'm wondering what are those things?
I can speak to that, Councilor Montgomery. One of the results we want to come out of our gap analysis and some of the surveys is what are the needs in the community that aren't being met by other service providers, including the school and other nonprofits. And then making sure that we're meeting a need, whether it's with what we're already currently offering or if something is newly identified. Our goal is definitely not to do duplicate services. We don't want to be competing or fractioning services. We're not a very big community in that way. So that's part of the process is we'll be able to identify what other people are doing, if there's still a need in that area, and if not, where else can we focus our energy and resources.
So you're saying that if we did identify a need and there wasn't a service provider in the community that you would think that we would step in or we should step in?
Potentially, there's a lot of factors.
Yeah.
It would be whether we have the resources and capacity to fill that gap, whether maybe there's another third-party organization that we think would be a better suited and we can find another way to support them in the community. So it all depends on what the gap is and
Like, can you give me an example of a gap that's not like, let's say, redundantly provided?
So let's use like teen leadership programs. There's a great leadership program at the high school, I believe at both high schools. So we shouldn't be duplicating that services, but maybe there's a way we can enhance that service through the youth club, or maybe there's a group of students that aren't accessing those programs that maybe there's a gap we can fill there. So there's more research that needs to be done of what's out in the community. We don't have a really strong picture of the full picture.
Okay.
Is that did that
I
answer
mean,
your question?
yeah, I understand that, we need to kind of complete this kind of analysis before we'll have kind of solid answers. I guess, I'm concerned that we're kind of, exploring the expansion of the scope of services before we even, get to the point where we are developing a comprehensive set of strategic directions or a business plan.
Mr. Thackeray, did you want to respond to that?
If I may, I think part of just to support what Tracy and Linda are doing, they're trying to look at sustainable service models as well and look at how much money can we subsidize which programs and by how much. And because some of them we would subsidize quite heavily, other ones I don't think you would necessarily. And I think this is part of what you shared with me and what you want to go and look at in order to create what are good value for money. And that doesn't mean we wouldn't spend money, but where is the right fit for us? And how much are we going to subsidize certain programs to find out what's the best return on investment, both in terms of cost benefit, but also impact and service and what we can do for people.
Yeah, I guess what I'm kind of seeing is in my head, we obviously know that there's kind of a fair amount of money being spent towards this right now. And so I would say that that's unsustainable. So if we're kind of like, I think we need to figure out, within reason, how much money we are going to be throwing at this whole program going forward. And then so it's like, are we going to be starting programs now that we're going to end up cutting, like next year? So I just want to avoid, stuff like that happening. I guess, yeah, to your point, let's make sure that we're directing, money or resources towards things that, are sustainable and that have a long-term, I guess, life.
Absolutely, and that's definitely one of our goals of the business plan, is to create sustainable programs that will last and be able to grow as the community grows. One of the other things is we want to make sure we transition programs in an appropriate way so that we don't hinder or impact families negatively. So we have to be really conscious and strategic about the way we change and transition programs. Yeah.
Okay.
If I can follow Councillor Montgomery's question, is one of the things that we're going to be changing is the programs that used to be offered during the day, the self-esteem, anger management that the school division could put on themselves? Is that one of the things that we're shifting away from? And if so, has the school division been notified of that?
So in response to that, what we're doing is that's one of the programs that we're evaluating. And we've pre-scheduled a meeting with the team of school counselors with all the schools and the team lead, and that's something that we're going to be reviewing and looking at and seeing how it can be revised and what role we really should be playing in that and what that looks like. And I think too, just to be able to articulate what, when we're talking about gaps in service, if that is a big gap in service, how do we strategically support the school in implementing that? So maybe it's not our role to offer the program to the extent that it has been in the past, but maybe our role changes to support the school differently in providing that program and service than we have in the past.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Peterson.
Thank you, Worship. One of the things that just, the last thing I have to say on this is that one of the things that I didn't see, and I know that it's tacitly accessible in the plan, but that is that identification of priorities. So I think it's going to be incumbent on us, as following up from Councillor Montgomery's statements, to decide what the priorities are once you've done the gap analysis, and we will be taking that direction from you. But one of the things that this council has to decide is what capacity we have in terms of budget. And so I think that identifying priorities in terms of how we're going to meet that capacity in terms of our budgeting, and then ensure that there is sustainability. And while we know that there are grants available, that certainly doesn't come in that process, because grants are certainly not sustainable. And in saying that, one of the things that I look at, that I have a great deal of care and concern for, is relative to after-school care programming. And when you were asked for an example, the most immediate one that comes to mind, I think that Golden Hill School Division said that they'll be charging somewhere in the area of $423 a month per child for after-school care. I'm not sure if I have that number exactly right. And so that particularly for single-income families, that could be prohibitive, especially if there's more than one child. That would certainly be difficult. But whether or not we have the capacity to take over that kind of a program, but one of the things that we could do through partnering is look at threshold sustainability through contributing to that existing program. Those are the things that I'm really interested in doing, and seeing the continuity of service, but primarily identifying the priorities, linking the priorities to the budget capacity, and maintaining sustainability throughout.
So just to build on one comment on that is, while we haven't met with Golden Hills about the program yet, it's on the books for July. One of the benefits of them offering that type of program in a school setting is they become licensed by the province, and then they create subsidies for those families. So even though it's $423, a big portion of that gets subsidized by the province, and it goes directly to the service provider, and the families only pay, it's about a quarter
20 to 33%.
Yes, depending on how many children and.
I guess when we do this plan and we set up that pathway, for me, having, for the sake of taxpayers, having that language of identifying priorities, linking those priorities to capacity in terms of budget, and having sustainability, seeing that language in the plan as we go forward, for me, that's very important.
Definitely. And we agree. I think setting priorities is one of the hardest parts of running programs like this. And one of the things we've never really done in the past is when we conduct needs assessments, we don't really have a strong focus on youth. And so as we look to do our next FCSS needs assessment, which I believe we're slated to do in
2019.
2019, I think that's right. We want to have a more heavy focus on youth, so we do get a better sense of the needs in the community.
And I know that those will all come through in the strategic plan. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. Councillor Corbeil.
Thank you, Your Worship. I do like the fact that we're doing a gap analysis, and I'm assuming we're going to be looking at things that we're overlapping, and I think this is going to change. And I'm not even going to just say on a yearly basis, but like probably every 5 years we could probably have a look and see even where the community is at or whatever. So are we going to do it like a needs assessment or find the gaps? Is this going to be a consistent thing where it's done every, say even 3 to 5 years or whatever?
Yes, is the short answer. So FCSS is required to do a needs assessment every 3 years, and so we want to build on that needs assessment and have a strong youth focus. The other thing we can do is we want to look at long-term planning with 2, 3, 5 year planning, but we also want to look at program evaluations. So at the end of a session, we want to do program reviews with parents and staff and participants. So we're making sure that our programs, even session to session, are meeting the needs. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Corbeil. Are there any other questions or comments? Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Bauer.
I just wanted to ask and end on a positive note. What is your registration for your summer programming? And can you tell us a little bit about what programs will be offered this summer for our community?
So I think there's 8 weeks or 6 weeks of summer programming, and the maximum that we can take is 40 kids in each program. And all the programs are full with waiting lists. So there's a variety of different programs. They have a theme for each week. Every Thursday is focused on a field trip day, and then on Friday is a focus of community service. So they, for example, may go out and do a car wash one Friday. They maybe do a bottle drive the next Friday, and they take all the money that they raised from that and they donate it to the Children's Hospital at the end of the year. And then during the day they have a bunch of different type of recreational and social type of programs that the kids participate in.
Thank you very much. Councillor Corbeil.
I move the council accept this report as information.
Thank you, Councillor Corbeil. You've all heard the motion. All in favor? And the motion is carried. Thank you, ladies. Thank you, Linda, for your report. Which brings us to 7.3, the new business welcome to town policy number 6201, which is on page 27. And Ms. Sawatsky, are you speaking to that one?
Yes, Your Worship, thank you. At the June 20th regular council meeting, council instructed administration to bring back an amendment to policy 6201 to make it a requirement to notify the Chamber of Commerce of any new business in town. So administration has brought back the policy with the change identified, and we're bringing it back for council's approval as amended.
Thank you, Ms. Sawatsky. Councillor Sobel.
I'm ready with a motion, Your Worship.
Thank
if
you,
you're ready.
Councillor Sobel.
I'd move the council adopt policy number 6201, new business welcome to town policy as amended.
Thank you, Councillor Sobel. You've all heard the motion. All in favor? And that motion is carried. And item 7.4, the Drowning Prevention Week proclamation, page 33. Ms. Sawatsky.
Thank you, Your Worship. Council has received a request from the Life Saving Society of Canada to proclaim National Drowning Prevention Week in Strathmore. National Drowning Prevention Week is July 15th to 21st, and it is one of the Society's leading public education initiatives. Administration is recommending the proclamation.
Thank you, Ms. Sawatsky. Deputy Mayor Bauer.
I have a personal story. In 2003, when my youngest was just 26 months, we lived through a near-drowning experience. I want people to know that this can happen in a blink of an eye, and that even while others were casually enjoying the hot tub, they did not know that my child was drowning next to them and must have thought he was merely floating. It's a fact that PFDs save lives, and they should never be taken off a child when near the water, as it was suggested to me on that day. Thankfully, my son is okay and made a full recovery due to his age and natural resilience. Unfortunately, 372,000 people a year worldwide are not so fortunate. The Life Saving Society urges individuals to provide active supervision in and around water, refrain from consuming alcoholic beverages while participating in aquatic activities, and wear a life jacket while boating. If every Canadian followed these steps, we could greatly reduce Canada's drowning rate.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Sobel, sorry, that's force of habit. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Bauer, and I appreciate the personal story because that brings it home to so many of us who know you and know your son. Looking for a motion now to get me out of this mess. Councillor Corbeil.
I move the council proclaim July 15th to 21st, 2018 as National Drowning Prevention Week in the town of Strathmore.
Thank you, Councillor Corbeil. You've all heard the motion. All in favor? And that motion is carried. This brings us to item 8, committee reports. 8.1, reports from committees on which councillors sit. Councillor Peterson.
Thank you, Worship. The reports are before you. I just wanted to point out there is an error on page 39. Mr. West directed that the June 15th Emergency Services Golf Tournament was a huge success, raising $23,000, and the money will be distributed to Victim Services and to the Hospice Society, not to WCCS. Of interest in the Woodemsa report is that the Growth Management Board has formed an advisory advocacy committee for the purpose of improving ambulance service, particularly with regards to dispatch. So that is something that this committee should definitely think about. Yes.
I just had a question for
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Just with regards to the monitoring working alone, what would that entail?
Possibly, I think our director would be much better to answer that than me.
I apologize, Councillor. I did not hear your question.
Oh, just
was
with regards to
reading
the,
ahead.
the monitoring working alone initiative, I just wanted to know what that would entail exactly.
Oh, so the monitoring working alone is part of the OH&S requirement that we will have begun discussions with Les Zimmer, our occupational health and safety specialist, mostly around municipal enforcement and them working alone, doing traffic stops as well as door knocks. So there's a whole process that's being laid out that they will be involved with as soon as that communication tie-in is finalized. Also, in conjunction with the working alone is journey management. So when we are traveling as an organization or individually, we participate in journey management. Journey management is just exactly as it sounds. We call in and provide them with the information, direction of travel, time to of arrival, and I can actually say that it's being tested out because I failed to report in when I arrived at my location, and everybody that needed to be called was called, and I was in deep trouble the next week. So the two go hand in hand, actually.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I think the neatest thing about this is that though, the organizations pay for the phones, the service provision, there is no additional cost. So that's a huge benefit to our organization for sure, and for the safety of all of our people and all of emergency service workers.
Yeah, it still is gonna have to tie in the emergency management piece around, and with, also with OH&S and some corporate policies around adverse weather and when it's time to make the decision to travel home safely. And then, of course, the journey management piece kicks in for each individual that's traveling, and so there's some other corporate policies that need to be put in place definitely before fall and the snow events that could require managers or individuals to make that safety choice to travel.
We're not gonna have to like hire an extra person to keep track of people on the road or something, are we?
No.
No, that's being done
That's
through
what they
the,
do, that's what they're doing
Yeah.
right now at no additional
Yeah.
cost.
Okay, great, thank you.
and then, Your Worship, under Wheatland Housing, one of the major things, impacts, I think, of this report to note is that we have 92 families that remain on waiting lists for low-cost housing in our community. I don't think that this is unusual across this province and in others as well, but it is something for this council to consider going into the future. Affordable housing for our community is a major consideration and a major concern. And I just also want to say, in relation to that, our Director of Social Housing is Mrs. Rita Beveridge, and she is doing a Herculean job in finding housing for people and setting up partnerships for subsidy programs in the community. She's doing a remarkable job. The really good news is that Wheatland Lodge has purchased a new van, the majority of the money raised by the residents themselves and others from many donations from Lions clubs across our various communities, and they will get their 16-seater van in August. And they were just cranky that it's not going to be here in time for the parade this year, but they were very happy. And finally, the overnight shelter is ready to open imminently. They are just in the process of screening and gathering volunteers. That is my report, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. Councillor Corbeil.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was just going to report that our Recreation Committee met last Thursday, and not a ton to report. I just think that there was, 13 people, I think, attended. Very excited, very eager to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Corbeil. Deputy Mayor Bauer, and then Councillor Sobel.
Thank you, Your Worship. The youth club, as we heard earlier, is currently operating under the leadership of Tracy Simpson, Director of Community and Protective Services, and the town of Strathmore is responsible for programming and staffing. The Youth Club Board of Strathmore is currently reviewing their society mandate and operating model, and it is my recommendation at this time that the council liaison position be suspended on the Youth Club Board. I currently hold that position, and I'm asking for council to support me in being able to remove myself from that board, please.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Bauer. Are there any comments or questions regarding that? Councillor Sobel.
I guess just a question to Councillor Bauer. Are you, just so I'm clear, are you suggesting someone else be appointed to that board at this time?
No, I would not suggest that. The Youth Club Board Society should be, at this point, operating on their own, separate from the town. The town has been responsible for programming and staffing since 2015. And I see a little bit of an overlap there, and time for them to take what they have learned and regroup as a society, and then perhaps go and get some outside advice from Community Futures or another outside organization, then come back to the town. And perhaps at that time, if they were to ask for support through another council member, we could offer them the support then.
So my only issue with this is that it was the board that asked for and agreed to a council position on their board. If we're going to, I have no problem with ending it, but I think that it should be the board asking that or advising council that they no longer desire to have a council member on their board. I'm not sure that it's our place to remove ourselves from that board.
Councillor Peterson.
So just in a question to administration, did we request that position, or did they request the position? Maybe before my time, I'm not sure. because I think that is a point, so, if it was our doing, and I guess the other thing would be with relative to existing relationships in terms of any monetary support that we give the existing youth club board.
Right.
And I don't know that if we do that now, if we have to have representation there, or if we could have staff representation, and because they're already running the programs. I guess what I'm asking for is some guidance around this.
I wonder if I could make a suggestion that might solve that issue. So obviously, I think it's clear Councillor Bauer would like off that committee, and I don't have a problem with that. And I wonder if we could follow that up with administration talking to the board and seeing if indeed they want another council member on their board, with the understanding, as Councillor Peterson just so properly pointed out, that if there's a financial, if we have a financial, if there's any finances going to the board from the town, then I think that's one of the criteria for us to have a board member.
Mr. Thackeray?
If I may, I think it's in order for council to receive Councillor Bauer's request to be removed.
I'll make the motion.
And I think that is in order. I think the question of the future, I think, could be referred, and I would recommend, if council wants to discuss it, refer it to another meeting in time, in which we could discuss the matter further, if that's what your choice is. At this time, I think I don't, as I understand it, I don't think there's urgency with replacing this liaison right now. If I'm understanding correctly, then council could take its time to render a decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Peterson?
Your worship, I would move that council approve Deputy Mayor Bauer's request to step down from the youth club for the reasons that she related. And secondly, that administration research the necessity of having a councillor sit on this committee in the future.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. You've all heard the motion. All in favor? And the motion is carried. Are there more reports from you, Deputy Mayor Bauer?
No, thank you, Your
Okay,
Worship.
thank you. And we'll move on to Councillor Sobel's reports, and then Councillor Montgomery.
Thank you, Your Worship. At this afternoon's Chamber of Commerce meeting, Mayor Fuel, Deputy Mayor Bauer, and Sharon McCormick provided an update on a new Strathmore Motor Products Sports Centre. In addition to also emphasizing the opportunities for anyone to become involved by sponsoring some of the facility ingredients, such as scoreboard or a change room, Ms. McCormick provided committee members with a copy of the new SMP Sports Center brochure, which I may add is very well done, and I'll do the... This will be available shortly. I just point out, and I want to thank administration for their work on this. It's not very often I get very excited about a brochure, but I got to tell you, this is really well done. It's the first one I've ever read. The other item I would comment on is that members of this committee have agreed to judge the various entries in the upcoming Heritage Day Parade, and their involvement in this event is greatly appreciated, and I thank the Chamber for that. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Sobel. If there are no other reports, then I'm looking for a motion. Councillor Corbeil?
I move that council accept the reports for information.
Thank you, Councillor Corbeil. All in favor? And that motion is carried. Item 8.2, Council Committee Reports, page 41. Deputy Mayor Bauer?
I move that council accept the reports.
That's okay. He said Deputy Mayor.
Okay. I move that council accept the reports for information.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Bauer. And you've all heard the motion. All in favor? And that motion is carried. Item 9, items directly related to council. I don't believe we have anything there. Item 10, bylaws. 10.1 bylaw 18-08, land use bylaw amendment bylaw, page 53. And that is Werner Fisher. Welcome, Mr. Fisher.
Thank you, Your Worship, members of council. This bylaw is for first reading. It pertains to adding a definition of cannabis stores to the bylaw and some related definitions, regulations respecting cannabis stores, and adding cannabis stores as a discretionary use in certain districts, namely 3 districts, the downtown, the highway commercial, and the light industrial district. The recommendation is that council give first reading to the bylaw this evening, and that a public hearing be held on September 19th, 2018.
Thank you, Werner. Councillor Peterson.
Your worship, I would move that council give first reading to bylaw number 18-08, land use bylaw amendment bylaw, and that council hold a public hearing in respect to bylaw number 18-08 on September 19th, 2018. Two separate motions? No problem.
Thank you. You've heard the first motion then from Councillor Peterson. Any discussion?
I have some questions.
Councillor,
No. First reading. Got to save them. The public hearing.
All right.
so we have a motion for first reading to bylaw number 18-08, land use bylaw amendment bylaw. All in favor? And that motion is carried. Councillor Corbeil?
I move that council hold a public hearing in respect to bylaw number 18, September 19th, 2018.
Thank you. You've all heard that motion. All in favor? And that motion is carried.
Can I ask these questions to Werner?
No discussion. No, not till second reading.
I can't ask just general questions about it?
No.
Huh.
You'll get your drink.
At the public hearing, I think. Let the record show. Item 10.2, procedure bylaw amendment bylaw 18-12. Ms. Sawatsky?
Thank you, Your Worship. Administration is bringing forward some changes to the terms of reference for 2 of Council's committees. The first is the Downtown Design Review Committee. The committee has met over numerous of reference is attached in your package, proposes to rename the committee to the Downtown Vitalization Committee. It also proposes to widen the committee's scope so that the committee can provide recommendations on economic development initiatives, community events in the downtown, and branding and aesthetic elements of the downtown. The committee aims to move away from reviewing signage applications and wishes to provide their recommendations on larger construction projects exceeding $75,000 in construction value. Another important proposed change is to include a member from the Strathmore District Chamber of Commerce on the committee, and the committee hopes to, in doing this, to combine efforts to improve Strathmore together. The second committee that we're requesting changes for is the Traffic Advisory Committee. The changes requested are for membership on the committee, increasing the membership from 5 members to 7 members, and the 2 members that will be that the committee is hoping will make up the increase will be from both the public and Catholic school divisions. Administration is recommending, all 3 readings this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sawatsky. Councillor Montgomery?
Don't bother asking any questions, anyone. I will move that council give first reading to bylaw 18-12, procedural bylaw amendment bylaw.
Thank you, Councillor Montgomery. You've all heard that motion. All in favor? And the motion is carried. Councillor Peterson?
I would move that council give second reading to bylaw number 18-12, procedural bylaw amendment bylaw, and I have a question. Your
Yes,
Worship.
and we've now had second reading, so
So my question is just with regards to, and I know Ryan isn't here to answer it, but just to ensure that there's no duplication on the tourism committee and this. I mean, I think that it is complementary.
Yeah, that's the downtown developing the DNO.
you mean with their new terms of reference, if it'll bring them too close to the...
Well, I just think that there needs to be definitive consideration to not duplicate. I do believe that at some point in the near future, those two will come together. But, for the time being, I think that there's probably, I believe that once the Tourism Commission is up and running and they have their strategic alliance in place, that these two groups will find a natural home together. But in the meantime, I think that that should be an awareness, that's all.
Thank you. Councillor Sobel?
Yeah, and I agree completely, Councillor Peterson, I think. So this was actually discussed, or began to be discussed, probably over a year ago, yeah. Because it's a natural progression from where, you know, the job of, and that's the reason I wanted to speak, was just to compliment the members of the Downtown Design Review Committee, because they've done an amazing job, you know, and it's not always noted that, you know, if you go back 5 or 6 years, the biggest issue we had in our downtown was vacant buildings and lack of people. That's changed, and I'm not going to say that it was DDRC that accomplished all of this, but you know, there has been a lot of progress down there. So they're part of the solution, and I certainly compliment them. But everything that they wanted to do in those years has basically been done, and it's time that they move in. And I look forward to the day to see them combine with the tourism organization. So that's excellent. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sobel. So we have a motion on the floor for second reading for bylaw 18-12, procedural bylaw, amendment bylaw. Any other discussion? All in favor? That motion is carried. Deputy Mayor Bauer.
I move that council give unanimous consent to a third reading of bylaw 18-12, procedural bylaw, amendment bylaw.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Bauer. You've all heard that motion. All in favor? Motion is carried. And Councillor Corbeil. Oh, Councillor Montgomery. Councillor Corbeil, stop doing that.
I move that council give third and final reading to bylaw number 18-12, procedural bylaw, amendment bylaw.
Thank you, Councillor Corbeil. You've all heard that motion. All in favor? And that motion is carried. Which brings us to item 11. Is there any urgent business that is to be discussed? I don't believe we have any. Item 12, questions between councillors and/or council statements. Councillor Sobel?
I have two, Your Worship, this evening. The first one I would like to report on is in regards to what is locally known as the cream can. It's the it looks like a bit like a Stanley Cup. It's owned by the Wheatland Crisis Society, and very simply the concept is when you go to their fundraiser, if you pay $250, you get to possess the cream can for a month. Our month was June, and the cream can appeared at the Wheatland District Historical Society walking tour, the Newsy Neighbor Festival, and it was also held, an internal staff raffle was also held, and the Aquatic Center held a toonie swim as a fundraiser. Council, and specifically Councillor Montgomery, and I appreciate all of his efforts on this, also set up a GoFundMe page on Facebook, and there was $600 raised on there. So in total, with the $250 that council put in to purchase the ownership of it for a month, a total of $1,550 was raised for the Wheatland Crisis Society, and it was turned back over to them a couple of days ago. So that's my first announcement or report, Your Worship, on that issue. And the second one is in regards to the Strathmore Performing Arts Festival Committee. So on June 18th, a substantial number of Strathmore and Wheatland County residents met to discuss the formation of a Strathmore Performing Arts Festival Committee. I understand that the goals of this committee, after acquiring society status, will be to hold an annual festival focusing on allowing all age groups to compete in the areas of piano, vocal, musical theater, choir, band, and general instrumental solo. Festivals of this nature will bring participants, friends, and family to our municipality, and this clearly benefits our town financially. Equally important, however, will be the experience and education which will be acquired by all festival participants, as education is an integral part of this program. The committee has a number of priorities, and fundraising will be at the forefront. Recently, a committee representative asked if this council would voice their support of this new venture, and that is my request here tonight. I would move that council demonstrate their support for Strathmore Performing Arts Festival by providing a letter signed by the mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Sobel. You've heard the motion. Is there any discussion or questions? All in favor? And that motion is carried. And that's all for your statements? Thank you very much. Councillor Peterson.
Your Worship, one day ago, the provincial government introduced an anti-racism grant in the amount of $25,000. And I would like to encourage our community and our administration to reach out to community groups to ensure that an eligible group from our community apply for this worthwhile grant. There are many groups in our community who would be eligible for that, and the town does have a grant writer. I'd be more than happy to assist as well. Wheatland Society of the Arts, what's the group you belong to? SWAT. Yes, the SWAT, the Restorative Justice Program in the community, Youth Justice Program in the community. All of these would be eligible for this grant, and in fact, probably joining together in the initiative would be most worthwhile. The second thing I wanted to mention, Your Worship, is one of our elementary schools in the community is a Leader in Me school, and it is Wheatland Elementary. They focus on building community leadership in their students, and I just want to say that this group of very young children on their own initiative have raised hundreds and hundreds of dollars in the community. Most recently, they donated $500 to the Happy Cat Sanctuary after seeing the town's contribution. They also donated money to the Western District Historic Society and several other community groups in the community, and highly commendable for them. And finally, Your Worship, you received a letter that you copied to council regarding 6 awards eligible for International Volunteer Day at Government House in Edmonton. And just to draw council's attention to this, we have many youth, adults, and seniors in our community that are certainly eligible for this, and for council to maybe have a look. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson.
Bishop, if I could just ask one question.
Yes.
I am putting in a submission for a youth. So if maybe we can just coordinate if anybody else on council is planning on doing this.
No, you went to that already.
Thank you, councillors. That brings us to administrative inquiries. Ms. Sawatsky, are there any?
Thank you, Worship. We have 3 inquiries. The first is from Councillor Sobel regarding parking at the Civic Center. The inquiry reads, a significant amount of concern has been voiced on local social media dealing with the fact that there are 4 staff-only parking stalls situated in what is best described as choice locations in front of the family center. As an organization focused on providing the best service to our constituents, and this means providing them with the best parking stalls, I would respectfully inquire as to whether these staff-only stalls may be moved to a location similar to where, for instance, the Civic Center stalls are presently located.
So I can speak to that if you're okay. So the staff parking stalls were relocated to create more handicap access parking stalls along the building. But they will be moving to the west side of the family center this summer, and so by the start of ice season in September, they'll be relocated and creating more handicap stalls. Yeah.
Thank you, Tracy. Ms. Sawatsky?
Thank you, Your Worship. The second inquiry is regarding Citizens on Patrol, submitted by Councillor Sobel. It reads, the purpose of a Citizens on Patrol organization is to build safer communities by mobilizing citizens in our town and to participate in a community-based crime prevention initiative in cooperation with their local law enforcement agency. One only has to read reports of the damage and mischief that occur in our community to realize this is a program that can really make a difference. In the past, membership has been varied quite severely. It is my understanding that it may be at an all-time low at this period, despite the increase in property crime. I'm requesting administration provide information that pertains to the current status of this program and what, if any, plans exist to resurrect and revitalize it. The third inquiry is regarding street naming, submitted from Councillor Sobel. It reads, "The issue was brought to my attention by a constituent and deals with what I believe may be a safety issue. Some time ago, the private roadway that leads from Cambridge Glen into the aged care Sagewood complex, continuing to the privately owned Sagewood Villas, was officially named Sagewood Gate. The issue, however, is that no change of address was ever made at either the main building or any of the villas. All fall under the address of 140 Cambridge Glen Drive. This in spite of the fact that none of them are actually located on Cambridge Glen Drive. They are all on Sagewood Gate. My fear, of course, is that ambulances, police, and perhaps even fire responders who are not familiar with this situation may spend valuable minutes trying to determine where the address is. It would be appreciated if this issue could be looked into and determined whether this is, in fact, a safety concern for emergency responders."
Thank you for that. And I think that brings us to the end. Looking for a motion to go in camera.
Move
Or
to
do we
go in
need-
camera.
We don't need to go in camera. We dealt with all our items, so I'm looking for a motion. We have a motion to adjourn. You've all heard the motion, and I'm stunned. All in favor? And we are adjourning at 8:25.